Aloha and welcome to Reflections on Interpretation, talking story with guides and interpreters. I am Tim Merriman, your host, coming to you from the Big Island. My guest today is Tobias Merriman, who happens to be my son, and I call him Toby. And he is the Assistant Director of CVeX, a program at Southern Illinois University. Toby, briefly, could you tell us what your role is in CVeX?
The Center for Virtual Expression is SIU's attempt to pull together all of our AI, VR, AR, basically all of our modern technology teaching platforms into one place. So this facility handles all those technologies, gamifications. People teach everything from computer programming to creative writing in this facility. And we're just supposed to support them and enable them with our equipment and our expertise.
You and I did a podcast together just a few days ago, and
I vaguely remember that.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, that to me is a familiar scene in Southern Illinois because it's kind of looks like Devil's Stand Table at Giant City State Park, where I worked for 8 years.
Yep. I took a couple photos from Giant City and fed them into the image AI and asked it to reimagine it as an oil painting. And I asked it to place a person standing on the cliff looking at all of it.
Wow. Well, that's part of the demonstration to say to interpreters and guides, AI and some of this imaging ability are available. They're in many places we're going to talk about. They're free. And you can use them for what you wish to do. But we're primarily going to talk about using AI in interpretation today in terms of an interpretive guide or an interpreter who is leading tours, who is doing guiding activities, and recognize that there's maybe a more advanced presentation we could do some other time that's about how you might use it in interpretive planning, management, research, and other related areas. I think the obvious thing is that a lot of people in our field would say about themselves that they tend not to be a new adopter. The old term for it in the early 1800s was Luddite. The cotton and wool mills began to get power machines that wove cloth, and that was not well accepted by the professional weavers. They felt it was going to steal their jobs. And we have some of the same issues available now, that there are people who feel this might be a problem for them. But I just can't imagine as a person in 2023 wanting to use a typewriter to type a grant proposal or a doctoral dissertation or even a report to your boss, or a slide projector to do presentations or take photos with a film camera. And yet I know there are people that do all of these things and to some degree hold on to it because they view it as an art form now, and they want to show that they can still use film the way Ansel Adams did or whatever. How do you find acceptance in your academic realm?
A mix of reckless adoption, total rejection, and then 80% of people are undecided. But if we can get that 80% curious, I think we can make this a little more graceful than our last few gigantic technical hiccups, like the invention of the internet, the calculator, we invent technology endlessly, and occasionally it does disrupt our lives, and AI is going to disrupt us. But I think we're looking to that middle percentage of people to say, come on in, let's show you how you can safely, ethically, and easily adapt it to your life.
Well, we talked about this at some length on the podcast, and I would refer people to looking up Reflections on Interpretation, talking story with guides and interpreters, and catch the podcast if you're actually starting out with this YouTube presentation, because we're not going to go into as great a depth right here at this moment. How did you produce this image?
I asked for a hiking trail in the redwood forest, and I think I might have suggested that it be a foggy day. This was Midjourney AI. I also specified that I wanted it to resemble a digital photograph, a DSLR camera shot, which it somewhat does. If you look closely at the leaves, it looks a little more like it was hand illustrated, but the overall effect is pretty convincing.
Yeah, and it's very effective because
You've
Muir
been there,
Woods,
so
yeah, Muir Woods National Park in Marin County, California, north of San Francisco, one of the famous groves because it's so easily attended if you're in the Bay Area. And this looks like an entrance to a trail there. You explained the other day in the podcast, but I want you just briefly to tell where this came from.
the generative AIs are basically, just think of it as a very, very intelligent computer program that we've taught how to paint or how to Photoshop things. So it's seen millions of photographs, millions of paintings, and it can reproduce. It creates from inspiration, much like we do, but if it's never seen a thing, it has a hard time drawing it. But in this case, we humans have taken so many millions of pictures of the redwoods, it was able to get a pretty complete idea together.
Yeah, so if I ask it for something that is very not commonplace at all, like a extremely rare bird or snail
Yeah,
or something of that sort, it may not have it in its easy access.
it'll probably get it wrong.
Yeah. You were mentioning large language models
Yeah.
as being developed for translation purposes largely from one language to another.
If you've used Google Translate or something like that recently, you know that in the last 10 years, it's gotten pretty useful. When it first came into existence, you could rely on it to make you sound like a tourist. But now it gets a little more subtlety. Well, this technology comes from sort of a branch of that. And a large language model AI like ChatGPT or any of the other similar things like Llama 2, it's like talking to a person. You don't have to think about any computer language. You don't have to think about any code or any like phrases or commands. You don't have to know a single Excel formula. You just say, I would like to know more about this. And if it can tell you, it will.
You even mentioned the other day that it can write a computer program and that sometimes does it well, sometimes not so well.
Yeah, it's the same as drawing a picture. It learned from us. So sometimes it will actually reproduce our mistakes, or it will go off in a direction that you didn't really intend because it misunderstood. So the head AI engineer at Oxford who we work with says that in the next segment of computer programming, the most valuable programming language will be English or whatever language you can speak to the AI, because it's really all in how you word it and phrase it. You have to be descriptive and thoughtful in how you prompt it. And if you're not, then you get random stuff.
Is that the reason for the term conversational AI?
Yeah, it is. If to encourage someone to have success with it, I would say you need to sit down and talk to this like it's a person. Imagine you've sat down with Tim Merriman and you want to ask him about southeastern Colorado natural resource advocacy. You know he knows about it, and you don't look at him and say slash inform me. You say, hey Tim, tell me about this. Hey, tell me about that. Tell me more about this. You have a conversation.
Cool. Generative AI. This is the art, the painting, drawing, art
Yeah.
programs, and these are the common
These are
programs.
sort of the top dogs right now. Midjourney's my favorite, but they're all quite capable. And Stable Diffusion, if you have a modern-ish computer, if you've got a gaming PC or an M1 or better Mac, you could download Stable Diffusion. They have a downloadable version called Easy Diffusion, which anyone could set up. It's just download and run it. And you could be experimenting with this for free endlessly.
Yeah, for the record, I tried Leonardo and I produced nothing that was useful to me. And you mentioned to me later that it's not as easy, and Midjourney is a better starting point if you're a rookie at this.
Yes, but they all benefit from experience with the AI and experience in the field you're attempting to duplicate. You just need more time prompting Midjourney or Leonardo. And then once you got comfortable with the way you talk to an AI, which is very much like a human, but not quite, then all of your experience in photography would come in and benefit you.
And these are all Midjourney generated images, yeah?
Yep. I think I asked for a hiking path on the cliffs of Hawaii. The top right, I think I asked for Kealakekua Bay, which of course you live right next to, overlooking, and there's a lot of great pictures. It's a very, very beautiful spot. And so there's a lot of photography of these parts of Hawaii. So when the image AI goes to draw it, it has a lot to study from.
Yeah, in fact, it looks a little different than the reality today, but I can't say that it might not be something from the past. The very odd thing is people who live here tell me there used to be a sand beach where this shows a sand beach, and a big storm washed it all away 20 or 30 years ago, and it's all black lava rocks now. So
if there's old pictures of that, it's very possible that Midjourney has seen those. It's seen quite a lot. So
yeah, there's a huge archive of old photographs.
you can also tell it time period. You can say draw Manhattan in the year 1200, and you will get an empty lump of New York land. There won't be buildings. It attempts to give you what you want as long as you explain it well enough.
Why do you call it collaboration?
Because the AI helps you immensely, but it should not be trusted or relied upon itself. You would never want to write your history paper, just have the AI do it. You would A, get in trouble, your professor would be offended, and B, it could make things up. It is a much better collaborator than it is a replacement for anyone.
In fact, you called that hallucination, that it will make
We do.
it up as if
Yeah.
it was a person hallucinating.
I think my favorite explanation that people have ever heard me give was ChatGPT is like an extremely bright toddler. It's like a toddler with 200 IQ who's been watching, informational TV for 100 years. It knows a lot, but its judgment is just wild. So you really need to guide it. You need each other.
Well, I guess what I'm suggesting to guides and interpreters is if you use it collaboratively, you could come up with a more exciting tour or talk or program. You'll probably get to refinement of your program faster because the first steps will be much easier, and maybe it'll be more exciting for your audience.
Yeah.
And ideally, it's tapping into information that you would have to look up more ponderously on Google or whatever search engine you like. And so it's going to be consistent in going to those internet sources that you would go to anyway and bring up the information.
We tend to find ways that it can benefit pretty much anybody. But when we think about interpreters, I think about if you had had this when you were first tasked with taking over the Pueblo Nature Center, it would have been of huge assistance in writing grant proposals or in writing PSAs or in coming up with names for different events, different ideas for this. It would have helped you bureaucratically. It would have helped you creatively. And I think you would have just gotten a little bit more done with your work week.
Sure. Yeah, no, I can see the applications to management and administration. I'm really focused right now, though, on kind of the frontline guide, docent, interpreter, because that's who we train virtually through Zoom for National Association for Interpretation for their Certified Interpretive Guide program. And in there, we're trying to teach them to write strong themes, to choose a catchy title, not a title that's just purely a description of the program, but something that has a hook in it that gets people to want to go to the program.
And I've noticed you're always trying to say less, say the whole idea. When we've been practicing this, you practice by, I want to say this, but in 7 words or less, or in 1 sentence or less.
All the research suggests that one of the greatest challenges in interpretation is get an audience to pay attention. And the other joke we have is that asking an interpreter or a guide a question is like taking a sip from a fire hose. Very often we are so impassioned about our content area that we talk and talk and talk. So,
well, yeah, I was a fire hose of dinosaur facts.
Yeah, Toby early in his what was it, junior high, middle school?
I think the first time I was right around middle school. Yeah, for the
We were
dinosaur
doing
exhibit.
one of those Dynamation electronic dinosaur exhibits in Pueblo, Colorado, where I directed a nature center. And he served as a guide in the exhibit. So he's actually done a bit of this. And he grew up at the nature center where literally his friends that he saw on a daily basis were 21 to 25-year-old interns fresh out of college, biologists, historians, raptor specialists.
Red-tailed hawks, American kestrels, great horned owls.
So when he was 4 and 5 years old, he was using a lot of big words, and they called him the little professor. More interactivity ideas. One of the big things we try to get across to our folks is that a lecture is less interesting to people than actually doing something.
Right.
And so this is a chance to challenge AI to help you come up with more interactivity in your programming. Clear, measurable objectives. We're going to show you examples of some of these in just a minute. Hopefully this all saves you some preparation time and you find the resources you need quickly. And
animated image that records this is how GPT is used. You type in the prompt, just like a conversation. This person's asking how do I recording the sale of a car, or how do I sell a car? And GPT responds in most cases in 5 to 10 seconds. It's very quick.
And you said this is a Microsoft product?
Yeah, it's OpenAI, which is owned by Microsoft, and Amazon's doing it. Google has Bard AI coming out. Like, this is going to be a thing. It won't just be Microsoft.
Well, I've seen Zoom has got their own version of AI as well. I'm going to show some examples and wish to let everyone know that I'm using ChatGPT 3.5, which is the free version. And you use Chat 4.0, and we may try that in a minute to see what it does differently. And I've been calling these queries, but you've told me they're prompts.
Yeah, queries accurate, though. That is what we're doing.
Yeah, I'm asking it the question. I want to choose among 5 titles for my talk on bison stewardship. And I want it to be less than 7 words because it's a title. And I want it to be attention getting. This is what that came up with very, very quickly. I'm talking 2 seconds. In truth, I might use any of those 5. They're quite good. And yet I might look at them and for whatever reason, choose a slightly different one, depending on where I worked. If I worked at the Tallgrass Prairie State Park, or I believe there's actually a federal Forest Service property in northern Illinois in Tallgrass Prairie, they may have some terminology they prefer used. And so you might specialize this. I could actually feed it words I want it to use, can't I, Toby?
Absolutely. I was going to say, sometimes you might be in a position where you're running this program that's local, but there's a statewide initiative and the governor's office says, if use this language, this is the state initiative or the federal. Sure. And if you can line up with their goals, then you have a chance of getting greater funding. We see this a lot in academia. So you can say, do exactly this, and then tack on a statement at the end says, and use this language. And it understands that. That's not at all too complex for it. And this is a great way to break up your own writer's block. If you're sitting there staring at the screen going, what do I call this bison program? The AI will give you some great ideas, and it may not give you the final idea, but it'll help you get there. It'll definitely shake things up.
Helping someone figure out what program they're going to do and how they're going to give it is we want them to have measurable objectives. I have to say this is just so outside the realm of what a lot of people think they want to do, that their first response is, I want people to appreciate the importance of bison to the ecology of the prairie. I go, okay, I'm glad you want them to appreciate it. What does a person who appreciates that do?
Yeah.
Oh, what do they do? What do you mean? They appreciate it. I always take it a step further and go, well, if they appreciate it, do they donate money? Do they sign up to be a volunteer?
How much exactly do they appreciate it?
Yeah. And so when I gave this the prompt the first time, I just said create 5 program scope objectives easily measured at the end of a program, and it came up with real big things like increase in prairie restoration projects over the United States, or immense projects, things that a guide or an interpreter would not be responsible for. So I went back and said, regenerate. And then I gave it the examples, make a donation, volunteer, and it came up with 5. And oh, by the way, all of these 5 are good. In fact, we commonly teach people to use social media engagement to look at the number of hits on their website, or to look at the number of reviews they were given after a tour on tripadvisor.com, things of that sort. So it added some very useful things, a nice addition to thinking about teaching someone to come up with measurable objectives.
That's the collaborative element there, though. You just lined it out. You've done this stuff a long time. And when it shoots out bad answers, you know pretty quickly just by glancing from your experience working in parks and stuff like that. But you can see that this thing wouldn't be that great without you, but with you to judge its work and guide it in the right direction, it's much more valuable.
Yeah. Well, and here's an example. If you could just go to Google and ask Google to look up some reliable information sources on prairie restoration, and it would give you the usual 87 pages of places to go. And of course,
Scam.
And one of the problems with that is I'm always aware that the first 5 or 10 or 15 that come up were by paid advertisers.
Yep.
And to get to the ones that are more purely the nonprofit or governmental agency, sometimes I have to look down the list a bit. I asked this 5 very reliable sources on prairie restoration. Now, I am not a prairie restoration ecologist or practitioner, so I can't judge whether these are the best or not, but I'd kind of like to experiment a moment. If I would leave share, could you bring up ChatGPT and us try something?
Sure.
Toby is using ChatGPT 4.0, which costs $20 a month to use.
Okay.
Explain very quickly what 4.0 does that 3.5 does not do as a free service.
As they develop these models, they're called LLM, large language models, they add to them. GPT, it was the smartest one about a year and a half ago, and it's read many things, anything available in the public domain up to like 2018, 2019. Then they come up with a new one that's got more information. GPT-4 knows things up to 2022. Yesterday, they came out with the new version, which knows things up to April 23. And the new version of GPT combines, the new version of 4 that's coming out this week, combines all these elements. It can surf the web today. So you can ask it about your website now. You could ask it about heartfeltassociates.com. Are there any errors or any bad links, or what's the gist of this website? It can surf anything.
Well, I want to give you an activity I've done with Google.
Sure.
So the prompt will be identify 10 good sources of information on fire management and control in California. And so you're seeing this in real time in terms of what it'll produce. And
with
so
live links. If I click this, it'll take me right there while GPT keeps working.
and these are all hot links to the actual websites.
And then we hit a network error. I don't know how I did that.
Okay.
But there you go. That's what it looks like when it fails. It does a great job, and then it just stops.
Okay. Well, it came up with 6. Some of these are the same ones that I came up with on Google. And so that would be expected. Interestingly, when Google did it, it came up with USA Today, the newspaper, and it came up with National Geographic. And we do an activity in the interpretive guide course where we list all of these articles that Google came up with and ask them to rank them on reliability based on their experience working with these various media sources. And usually most of the people say, well, I guess I would rather learn from the fire science and outreach program at University of California than I would from USA Today, because USA Today is simply studying other people's information and publishing it in the paper.
Go right to the source.
Yeah. So why not go to the primary source instead of a secondary source? The other part of it is newspapers have advertisers that influence what they choose to promote. And very few newspapers these days are what I would call right down the middle of the road. They often have a point of view, and it's okay for them to have a point of view or opinion and have editorials on these subjects. But I always worry, if I'm trying to get reliable information on fire management in California, because I'm going to do a program on that, I want the most reliable. Nat Geo, I would have 20 years ago said, gee, highly reliable. Now I would say not so.
Yeah.
Only because Disney Corporation bought it.
I remember that.
I think it may have popped to the top of the list because they're a big advertiser on Google. I don't know. But the discussion we have with folks is you still have to be the judgment whether this is good information or misinformation.
Yeah. What you're up against with a Google search is search has been around for 30 years publicly, Alta Vista, and then Google's been around for 20. There's a thing called SEO, and we don't have to get into it, but it's called search engine optimization. And when you make a web page, you fill it full of words to try and jockey for the top position on people's search results. So Nat Geo has done SEO. It doesn't mean their content's what you want. Just means they've coded the web page to show up in search result. That doesn't work versus GPT because GPT actually reads the page. And of course they can get away with that because nobody has time to read everything. Well, GPT has time.
It has time, yeah. You can do creative things with it. I don't know that this is especially useful, but I actually asked it to write a poem in Robert Frost style, and it did. I mean, as I've read Frost as a youngster in high school and college, this sounds similar to his voice. Here they even mentioned in the last sentence, in Robert Frost's poetic style, I see the bison's tail forever free. And
took the assignment a little bit literally.
Yeah, it did. I also said, write a haiku poem, which uses a finite number of syllables and about prairie restoration and bison. And it did. And it's nice. I think I could write something better than that, but maybe not. Point being, it will do all sorts of things. And you did this image.
Yeah. I sat there in your PowerPoints just adding, I just went through all of your PowerPoints and got the gist of what was going on in the slide, put that into Midjourney, and it produced these images for me. And after, 10 minutes of this buffalo staring at me, I thought he deserved to be brought up to the front for a second.
Some interpreters, maybe even some guides, if you work at a property where you also have management responsibilities, you're sometimes asked to write an interpretive sign, an interpretive exhibit. You did. What did you ask this Midjourney to do?
I asked for a beautiful national park with way too many signs because I knew that was something I'd heard you and Lisa looking at this park or that museum or whatever. Some places there's not enough information, and it's also very easy to overwhelm the public with too much. And this is obviously just a comical example, but I knew you two would appreciate the joke as soon as you saw it.
No, I love it because that's Yosemite, the entrance to Yosemite National Park, and all those signs. And as ridiculous as that looks, we actually, in doing planning courses, Lisa has a slide she uses of a little park up in Montana that we stopped at, that a lot of dinosaur finds in that area. And at the entrance to this little county park, they had like 17 signs, all about basically the same message. They just perfecting the message by adding another sign.
And not taking away the first one.
not taking away the first 16. So as goofy as that is, sometimes people do that. But if you're writing exhibit text or signs or creating unique graphic images for a sign, it can be done with Midjourney or with these other programs. What does that mean? Please do not the volcano.
Well, I'll send it to you later, but there is a popular meme or internet joke of a person reaching out to pet someone else's cat, and the cat is looking very aggravated, and it says, "Please do not the cat," which is interpreted to mean, please don't do anything to the cat or with the cat. Just leave it alone. And I thought when a caldera is smoking, please do not the volcano would be an appropriate sign for the Zoomers. The Zoomers would get this. People under 20 would go, oh, that means don't do anything.
Well, that makes a big point. A lot of the folks in our field are digital natives. A lot of us didn't own a microcomputer when we were 25. We had my first one was at 37 years old. You were a child of 5, 4. And you grew up literally playing with them. And we have a lot of senior citizens, people who are docents at museums or Master Naturalist Program folks that take our guide course who I think can benefit from using this because they're less comfortable doing creative things on a computer. They probably use them pretty skillfully, but it's great that they can learn to do this. I gave you the ChatGPT this prompt to write text for a sign, and this is what it came up with. You came up with the image and the sign. And what did you ask it to do?
I asked for, again, a hiking path in the redwood forest, but I wanted a blank sign because I knew I was going to superimpose your text over it in PowerPoint.
Okay. So guess what? A lot of the folks in our field also use PowerPoints because they are useful to illustrate either a part of their program or in some cases, it may be the entire program. For 8 years, I was a state park interpretive naturalist, and I did a campfire program every Saturday night. And I used an ectographic projector and Kodachrome or Ektachrome slides. I would have loved the ability to generate absolutely unique images, and this does it very well. That's a pretty good passage, and I gave it a finite number of words to come up with that.
Here's one thing about the language AIs: if you don't limit the amount of text, they'll write you a book.
We live near Kealakekua Bay, about a mile. And that's where Captain Cook was killed in 1779. And Captain James Cook, many of you know, was the first European to visit Australia, New Zealand, Alaska, the Hawaiian Islands, back then the Sandwich Islands. So when he was killed at Kealakekua Bay, it's an important story. The British built a white obelisk monument down by the bay, and a lot of people hiked down a trail to see it. In fact, you and I did that one day, and interesting hike, and I'll never do it again because at my age, coming uphill on that black lava rock, and sunny,
I did it. I've done it twice, and I about passed out the second time. I had to stop and take a break halfway up. It was rough.
I asked them to improve this narrative and keep it at 75 words or fewer, and this is what it came up with. And I won't read this to you, but the point being, it can make things more concise. However, I didn't like this as what they came up with, and so I went in and changed it. Upper part of the panel, it's what ChatGPT wrote, and this is what I changed it to. And part of what I didn't like is it put the portion of the story about him breaking a mast, which had nothing to do with why he was killed. He was killed because he took the local king captive because they took one of his longboats. And Hawaiians lived communally. They viewed every property in the community as belonging to everyone. So they probably just thought of it as borrowing a longboat as a ship's captain who's in charge of everything that happens at sea. He was offended, so he captured the local king, and his warriors very quickly killed Captain James Cook at 52 years old, and he was done exploring. So whether my message is exactly the right message or not, I won't say. But point being, you don't have to take what ChatGPT gives you. You can work it over. You can make it your own. And
you should. I was going to say, with in this instance, if you were going to work with that topic more with GPT, I would say you should tell GPT it doesn't make sense to put this topic up against this topic. So let's split that up. It would remember that. It could learn from that mistake.
yeah, I do bonsai trees at home, which I'm going to ask you again, go to ChatGPT program, bring it up. I'm going to stop the share.
Okay. Let me switch this back over. And we should be on GPT. Is that what you see?
Yeah. 5 themes as complete sentences about why bonsai trees are important to Japanese culture.
There you go. It's going to have a lot to say. Complete sentence gives it quite a lot of elbow room. It's going to write you long sentences.
The Japanese cultural aesthetic of wabi-sabi, representing beauty and imperfection and transience, which resonates deeply with the philosophical underpinnings of Japanese art and spirituality. Well, as I read these are all good. I probably wouldn't take any one of these as a basis of my theme for my program. I would wordsmith or rewrite one of them to make my own, more particularly about why I do bonsai. But that would be a great start. And you drew this again with the same program.
I did. That's also Midjourney.
Why do they call that Midjourney? Do you know?
That's just the name they chose, but I go with it because I've partially learned it, so I understand it and I can talk to it. I'll get what I want out of Midjourney much quicker than I will out of the others. But I also just like it better. I feel like they are maybe slightly out in front of the other generative image AIs right now.
Well, I wanted you to do it as you did, just to demonstrate how fast this does this. And of course, yours was done with 4.0, and you've mentioned 4.0 is often wordier than 3.5. I asked it with the prompt in the upper left, and that's results it gave me. And by the way, it gave me a title for each one and then a theme. And I would not use them exactly like this. I might say, let's explore the deep connection between bonsai nature and Japanese culture and aesthetics.
This is one of those areas where bonsai is not an unknown thing, not a super niche thing, but it's a rarer thing, and the AI is less adept at kind of nailing the premise on it, but it's still able to bounce ideas off of you essentially, or allow you to do the same.
It's pretty good. It's a good starting point.
Yeah.
I like it.
Chat.openai.com.
We're going to suggest to you, you could seek training. I don't know what training is available. Toby, you mentioned that YouTube is probably the best place to go initially to get some experience.
There's a lot of how-tos for all the AIs on YouTube.
And we just did one. That's what this is.
Now there's about to be one more. Oh boy.
So if
we're part of the problem now.
Okay. We've got out there to sow our seeds of inspiration. But there are a lot of others, and so you can go there and get more ideas. But I would say get Chat GPT 3.5 and start playing with it. Get MidjourneyAI and start playing with it. I'm not finding Midjourney easy to use. I'm going to have some coaching from an expert in my family who lives in Illinois, but we're able to talk like this. And so I'm going to
just hope you can afford me.
I hope I can as well. Well, you have a big charge account with me. I don't know what you think. The first 17.
I thought that was wiped clean when your grandson got out of law school. I mean,
okay.
You can talk to my lawyer.
That's true. We now have a lawyer in the family, which we're all very excited about.
Desperately needed for some time.
Probably. they're obviously different tools, and some of them require a little bit more training and sophistication to use them. And
For sure.
so if you should happen to be someone who is at a university, you're going to start seeing programs like Toby's pop up all over the country, don't you think, son?
For sure. Right now, it's weird how few there are. There's us, and there's Oxford, and a handful of other places. And Oxford literally wants to work with Southern Illinois University at Carbondale because we are one of the few universities that is really preparing for this. And we want our students to be unafraid of AI. And even more importantly, we want our faculty to be unafraid of it. And we have a lot of great faculty who are really excited about bringing this into the classroom in a constructive way instead of a destructive way.
Well, in fact, your boss who brought you into this program is a published novelist and short story author, and he's excited about this, and yet it has big implications for his field.
He is, yeah, he has a published novel. He's a short story award winner. He's taught English here and creative writing and fiction for SIU for decades. And he says the essay is dead. Don't assign it. He thinks this sort of curriculum should be integrated with everything, or you'll just get run over by it. Like learn about it or learn about it the hard way is kind of the lesson.
And just had that discussion with a colleague who's staying with us right now and who's teaching via Zoom in China at Hainan University. And he was saying that a lot of his students turn in material that looks very much like it came off of AI. And
eerily similar.
Yeah. And part of what we discussed is, well, teachers, professors, you need to have a rubric that rewards people at a lower level for submitting something, and then gives them a better grade for submitting something creative, unique, thoughtful, that maybe started out as an AI return from a prompt.
Yeah,
So,
our English faculty are being really quite brave about this, but their stance is that if you ignore it and try to ban it or police it, you're going to get a bad outcome. If you teach the kids to use it responsibly and to enhance their abilities with it, you will just be able to demand better work of your students, and they'll be glad to do it because they'll be very much enabled to do so.
well, that is a quick look at ChatGPT and MidjourneyAI. And obviously, we just went a mile wide and an inch deep. There's a great deal you could learn by doing more with this, but you have to actually do it. Do you have a email address I didn't put up there?
It's on the website. You can find us there.
So
yeah, and you can
CVeX AI.
Find quick little descriptions of all the projects involved with the facility. They're very diverse, very weird, and they're all, I think, very exciting.
Well, think about it another way. If you work at a park, a zoo, a museum, a nature center, an aquarium, a tour company, if you're that new adopter, you have a chance to introduce this to your colleagues.
Yep.
And if we can be of help, let us know. And we'll be offering a certified interpretive guide course coming up December 4th to 13th. And you can sign up for it at interpnet.com. That's NAI, National Association for Interpretation's website, and their training calendar. It'll be on there. But we're going to start talking about AI in that course and helping folks who are earning that credential learn about how to use it. Thanks for joining us today. Special thanks to Toby, because he and I don't have tremendous opportunities to collaborate. His subject matter is a little different than mine, but here we've got a little bit of overlap. And so I was excited about learning from him on this.
This really is a unifier. This is a universally useful tool.
And if you have not been to our podcast, there is a longer podcast that will tell you even more about this today. And I look forward to hearing from you if you have questions. Aloha.